Welcome, everyone, and thank you for tuning into the Lewis Center interview series. Today, I am so pleased to have with us former U.S. Ambassador to Argentina and distinguished federal jurist, Ambassador Edward Charles Prado. He served for nearly 35 years as a United States judge, including as an appellate judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, and 19 years as a district judge for the Western District of Texas. Prior to becoming a judge, he served as U.S. Attorney for that district, nominated for the position by President Ronald Reagan and confirmed by the Senate the same day as his nomination. Judge Prado has also been actively involved in community and charitable affairs as a member in community organizations that include St. Mark's Catholic Church, the Whitty Museum Community Advisory Committee, the Philosophical Society of Texas, the Rotary Club, and Leadership San Antonio. He has also helped introduce the legal system and the history of law to children in the San Antonio community by conducting educational events in his courtroom. Ambassador Prado has received many honors and awards, including the St. Thomas More Award from St. Mary's University School of Law, Outstanding Alumnus from San Antonio College, the LULAC State Award for Excellence, the Achievement Award of the U.S. Attorney General, Outstanding Young Lawyer of San Antonio, Outstanding Federal Public Defender for the Western District of Texas. He is a member of the Edgewood Independent District Hall of Fame. Judge Prado was confirmed as 56th U.S. Ambassador to Argentina in 2018, arriving there for duty on May 8th of that year and serving in the position until 2021. Today, Judge Prado practices at the renowned firm Bracewell and is a member of the University of the Incarnate Word Board of Trustees. Judge Prado, thank you for serving on our board and for making time today for this Lewis Center interview.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. I feel closely connected to Incarnate Word, although I did not attend Incarnate Word. I have several cousins and nieces who went to Incarnate Word High School and also Incarnate Word University and graduated from here. So I have a connection to the university for a long time, based upon relatives, and always drive by here and wondered what the campus was like. And I've had the opportunity to visit, and I'm really impressed with the university and all it's accomplishing while I'm on the board.
Well, clearly you are connected, and certainly now with your official capacity. And again, thank you so much. And for the first question, Ambassador Prado, you had such a successful career in law, eventually becoming a federal judge, certainly a remarkable achievement that very few reach in the legal profession. And then in the latter part of your career, after achieving all the success in your formal field, you're offered an opportunity that is even more remarkable, if I may say, to become the U.S. Ambassador to Argentina. What went through your mind when the opportunity surfaced? Did you immediately decide to accept? Did the new opportunity and challenge give you pause? How did you come to your decision to accept?
Well, it was quite difficult, I think, my wife and I discussing it, because she is from San Antonio, born and raised here, as am I. And interestingly enough, neither one of us has ever lived outside of San Antonio. We did go to Austin for college, but we returned home. And so we've always lived in San Antonio. Never have we lived outside of the state, much less out of the country. So for us, moving 8,000 miles away was a big, big move. But we thought at the time as well that it's an adventure and an opportunity that you just can't pass up, the opportunity of representing the United States in a foreign country. And while it was a big change in careers, and took me somewhat out of my comfort zone in the legal profession, I had the opportunity of visiting Argentina on several occasions. The State Department had me on their speakers list. And so occasionally I would get calls from the State Department to make speeches in foreign countries on the rule of law, on the jury system, on the adversarial system. So I had some experience with the legal profession in Argentina, as well as other South American and Central American countries. So I had gone out of the country. I had experienced some relationship with Argentina and its legal system. So I felt a little bit comfortable in going to a country that I had visited before, and my wife had had an opportunity of going with me. So while it was a big change and a big challenge, I think throughout my career, I've always thought you have to take advantage of opportunities that come your way. And while it was a big change, it was also a great opportunity to do something different that I'd not done in my career.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so glad you accepted. So we had a born and raised San Antonio local there representing the United States. You know, you talked about your comfort zone of your legal profession. You also have your comfort zone, of course, culturally here in San Antonio, South Texas. Do you feel that your San Antonio roots, your South Texas roots, your Mexicano, Hispanic background helped you adjust and function more effectively in Buenos Aires and to execute your duties as ambassador there?
I think most definitely it did. Having knowledge of the language is valuable. You take advantage of the assets, of the talents that you have. And being a Spanish speaker was certainly an advantage. The ambassador that had been there previously did not speak Spanish. So when I got there and I spoke Spanish to the first people I met, they were impressed that I was able to communicate with them in their language. And there's a lot of things that are missed out when you go through an interpreter. That I could converse with them about their family, about restaurants, just general talk, and not just strictly business affairs. So it gave me the opportunity to build up relationships and trust, which as an ambassador, it's really important to have the trust of the foreign country that you're dealing with and foreign officials. So I was able to build up relationships with the Argentine government that I think other ambassadors who maybe weren't familiar with the culture, Hispanic culture, weren't familiar with the language, would have been more challenging. When you go through an interpreter, you miss out on a lot of innuendos and a lot of things that are implied when you speak the same language.
No doubt. I mean, even the best interpreters, they can't nail it 100%. And yeah, the language connection, potentially the most important cultural connection. Of course, Buenos Aires, as Hispanic as it is, it's also different, right? And I mean, I imagine it's also a different culture. And so I'm curious, like, what were some of the biggest cultural challenges of living in Buenos Aires and some of the differences that you encountered after spending your entire life in San Antonio?
Well, I was just going to say, that being said, maybe I was naive, my wife and I, but you just think Hispanic culture, it's all the same, and it's not. Each country is different, whether it's Ecuador, whether it's Colombia, Peru, they're all different, and it's not Mexico, it's not South Texas. 1/3 of Buenos Aires are Italian immigrants, for example. And they throw a lot of Italian phrases, Italian words into their Spanish. So the Spanish is not the same as what you've learned being raised on the west side, south side of San Antonio. So you had to practice your Spanish and learn Argentine Spanish and learn that it's not the formal language that is taught, because it has a lot of foreign phrases, Italian phrases that are put in, and we had to learn how to say things that were different from what we had learned growing up in San Antonio. You expect, okay, well, they have salsa and hot sauce and tortilla chips. Well, no, they don't have salsa. They don't like spicy, hot food, for example. You couldn't find a Tex-Mex restaurant in Buenos Aires that was a good of any kind. There were a couple of them, but you just couldn't find enchiladas and tamales and things that we were used to down here. So the food was different, the language was somewhat different, and the culture was different. Argentina has, next to the United States, more European immigrants than any other country in South America. So you have a lot of British. It has the 6th or 7th largest Jewish population outside of Israel. a large segment of Germans, uh, Ukrainians. I was amazed at what a large group of immigrants from Ukraine are in Argentina. So there's a lot of European influence in Argentina, and it's way different from, I think, most other Latin American countries.
Fascinating cultural experience for you. Now, back to the world of your professional skills and the legal profession. You had many years of experience as a judge, of course, that surely afforded you skill sets you were able to apply as an ambassador. But you had to take on responsibilities that were pretty different from what you carried as judge. What were some of the new professional challenges and experiences you faced, and what did you learn as a result?
I think it brought me back to my young days when I was representing someone in court, because I'm now not the decision maker that sits there and listens to both sides and say, this is the way I'm going to rule, this is the way it's going to be. That's it. Boom. Judge has ruled. Well, now I'm in a position of negotiating, and I'm representing the United States on policy issues. And I'm not arguing this is the law. I'm arguing this is the way the policy should be. You're dealing with rules and regulations from two different countries and their conflicts. And the Argentine law is different from U.S. law. You have U.S. companies, over 300 U.S. companies doing business in Argentina that are used to the U.S. legal system, rules and regulations, and how to do business in the United States. Now they find themselves in a foreign country where the rules and regulations are different, and there's conflicts with how they do business. So they come running to the embassy and the ambassador and say, could you help us negotiate or work with the Argentine government? We're having difficulty doing business in Argentina. So I would find myself meeting with Argentine officials in an effort to try to convince them to assist or be more sympathetic to the U.S. companies' point of view. Not only U.S. companies, but the U.S. government as well. Getting the Argentine government to support us on UN issues, wanting their support on certain elections, committee heads, and different things that were going on in the United Nations, with World Banks, issues with fishing, issues with military. You're going in 99 different directions. One day I might be talking to the Secretary of Commerce with regard to commerce. The other day I might be talking to the Secretary of Defense with regard to working together on some military issues. I might be talking to the Department of Treasury with regard to debt that Argentina owes and how the U.S. can help or assist. Just the gambit of issues are tremendous with all the different issues that are going on. You don't realize it, but the U.S. is the most powerful country in the world, and you are a significant part of the international diplomatic corps. There are almost around 200 countries in the world, and the U.S. and I think maybe perhaps China are the only countries that have ambassadors in almost every country. But the U.S. ambassador in Argentina is a big deal for Argentina because they depend so much on resources, and U.S. companies as well do a lot of business there. So we have a significant impact on Argentina. So they listen to me. Funny stories are that sometimes I'd have ambassadors from other countries that would approach me and say, can you approach the Argentines in our behalf? Because I think the United States and our country are in agreement on this issue, and we're trying to get Argentina to go along, but they won't accept our phone calls, or we can't set up calls or interviews with them or meetings with them. But you're the U.S. ambassador, and if you call, they will take your call and they will visit with you. So would you address this issue in our behalf and on behalf of the United States as well? So I found myself sometimes in awkward situations where not only was I advocating for the United States, but on the side I was also advocating for an ally colleague of ours who couldn't get in to see the Argentine officials.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, the day to day, the nuances of international politics at the highest level. I mean, you think, oh, an ambassador position. Oh, it's going to be enjoyable, full of relaxation. But just from your description, every day, something new, full of work, and just an accumulation of experiences during your 3 years there. Tell me, Ambassador, could you share with us a couple of the most memorable moments and experiences from your time as ambassador? Maybe a couple of moments of drama or excitement for you from that time of that 3 years in your ambassadorship.
Well, there's several. I think that the biggest thing is that the G20 met there. I'd been there about 6 months. And the G20, as you know, is when the 20 biggest countries in the world, their leaders get together and meet. So Argentina was hosting the G20, which meant the President of the United States, along with the leaders from Germany, Italy, England, Russia, China, Saudi Arabia. The 20 largest countries were going to be there. And so it literally was this big security issue that Argentina came to us and asked for our assistance in being able to furnish security for all the countries. The U.S. delegation, I did not realize it's the largest delegation, and we had almost 1,000 people come with the president to Argentina. So I had to host the president, and I think half of our cabinet that came with him. And that was really interesting, getting to sit in on meetings and seeing all the 20 leaders of the world sitting there and seeing them and hearing them speak in person was an awesome experience for me, and hosting the President of the United States when he came to Argentina. Interestingly enough, I was told that I was the highest ranking American in Argentina, and the only person that could outrank me was the president. So even though you had cabinet members and other leaders of the United States in Argentina, I was still in higher authority than they were. I think the other crisis I think that I had that was very challenging was when COVID hit. I happened to be the ambassador when the worldwide pandemic hit and everything shut down, and you had several thousand Americans that were there on vacation, that all of a sudden flights back to the United States are shut down. These people had prepaid vacations for a set amount of time, and now they find themselves in a hotel, don't know when their flights back to the United States are going to start again. Can't go to restaurants because all the restaurants are closed. And the challenge of trying to accommodate these frustrated several thousand Americans who are stuck in Argentina, who can't get back to their families, their jobs back in the United States, and trying to figure out how to deal with not only Argentine government, but also our own government that was prohibiting flights from Argentina. So I had to negotiate with my own government as well as the Argentine government to try to get these people flights back to the United States. So that was quite a challenge. There's so many different incidences. One incident, and it brings back the importance of knowing the language. The Secretary of Agriculture of both countries were meeting in Argentina, and the Secretary of Agriculture from Argentina said he spoke English and chose to negotiate in English. And we were negotiating the importation of beef from Argentina to the United States, and in exchange, Argentina would accept pork from the United States. So it was tick for tat. They'll send us pork. They'll send us beef. We'll send you pork. And we negotiated, but we cautioned them that we would accept their beef, but we had USDA rules and regulations, and that the Secretary of Agriculture couldn't just snap his finger, but they had to they had to meet certain regulations, health issues, and all before we'd accept their beef. So the Secretary of Agriculture started sending pork down, and was at the ambassador's residence, was going to have a reception showing off pork, and had hams and all sorts of pork, bacon, and invited 200 Argentines to my house for a reception promoting United States pork. At that same time, I then get a call from the president of Argentina. And the president of Argentina says, Mr. Ambassador, I'm speaking 2 blocks from your residence at the same time that your Secretary of Agriculture is going to be promoting pork. And I am speaking to the beef producers of Argentina. I'm going to have to tell them that the U.S. is not accepting our beef, but we're accepting their pork. I am requesting that you cancel that event at your residence. Well, I called our Secretary of Agriculture. I'm sorry this is taking so long, but I called our Secretary of Agriculture, Purdue was his name, and I said, Mr. Secretary, the president of Argentina just called me and said, since we are not accepting their beef, he doesn't want me to have this event promoting U.S. pork at my house when he's speaking at the same time to the beef producers of Argentina. So he'd like to cancel. And the Secretary of Agriculture from the United States said, it's too late. I've sent a bunch of pork down there. We're going forward with our event. So I'm stuck between the president of Argentina telling me to cancel this event at my house and the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture saying, no, we're going through with it. So I talked to my staff, and they looked at the regulations, and they tell me, you are higher ranking in Argentina than the Secretary of Agriculture. So, Mr. Ambassador, we're recommending that you call the Secretary of Agriculture and say, I don't care what you say, you're not having this event at my house, and cancel. And I realized the Secretary of Agriculture meets with the President of the United States every week, or I don't. So if I tell the Secretary of Agriculture you can't have this event, first thing he's going to do is go to the president and say, your ambassador is not allowing me to have this event. At the same time, I got the pressure from the Argentine president telling me to cancel. In any event, we were able to reschedule the event, and it all got resolved. But there was a crisis there where I had the president of Argentina demanding I cancel an event at my residence, and having the U.S. Secretary of Agriculture saying, no, we're going to go through with the event. So you run into issues like that you don't foresee. You never thought these type of events would happen, and all of a sudden I find myself in the middle of a crisis between the two countries.
It's a great story. The pork versus beef in the middle of tensions and interests, as we would expect in the life of an ambassador. Thank you for sharing that with us, Ambassador Prado. Back to what you first mentioned about Argentina, hosting the G20. Argentina is in the G20. It's such an important nation, but it's not in the U.S. news much. It does prominently appear during the World Cup every 4 years, but Argentina's importance is not only about soccer, of course. So soccer aside, why should we care about Argentina here in the U.S.? And why is it in the interest of the U.S. to better understand and strengthen our relationship with this great South American nation and with South America in general?
Well, over 100 years ago, about 100 years ago, just before the Depression, Argentina was one of the richest countries in the world. And there was a phrase or a joke that went around back then that said, oh, he's as rich as an Argentine, meaning that he was quite a bit of money. And then the Depression hit, and Argentina's never recovered. It's been over 100 years, and it's never quite been able to recover. Whether economic issues, political issues, dictatorships, coups, their politics has been such that it's been really challenging and difficult for Argentina to get back to the high stature it was 100 years ago. And some of them are still living in their glory years and still think that Argentina is better than other Latin American countries. And in reality, it's having its really difficult time. Right now, inflation in the US, in Argentina, is over 100%. We complain because we're at 4 or 5 or 6, something like that here, and we think inflation is high here. But if you can imagine living in a country where inflation is over 100%, it's just really difficult. But it's a rich country. It is in the top three as far as wheat is concerned, in the top three as far as soy is concerned. It has a lot of farming experiences with the world. They export a lot of grains. They have more oil than Texas. Interestingly enough, you go to the Permian Basin in West Texas, and we have over 100 oil wells. You go to Argentina, and they have less than 50, even though they have 3 times more oil than Texas. They just have not developed their oil industry. A few years ago, lithium was discovered. Argentina is one of the top 3 countries with lithium, and lithium, as you know, is used for car batteries, for cell phone batteries. So it's a something that all the other countries crave. So Argentina is important because it has a lot of resources. Unfortunately, the country's not taking advantage of all those resources and has not developed the manufacturing production of those resources. It's also at the tip of South America, and it's the landing point, or the port where you take off to go to the Antarctic. And a lot of countries, including China and Russia, are showing interest in Tierra del Fuego, which is the tip of South America, which is where you go off into the Antarctic. So it's our neighbor to the south. We do a lot of business with them. Their constitution is modeled after ours. Now, they don't interpret it exactly like we do, but their constitution is modeled after ours. So it's a country, it's one of the strongest countries in South America. It has a lot of resources. The education level of Argentines is higher than any other country in Latin America. So they have a lot of human resources that could be developed, and a lot of natural resources. There's a lot of potential there. Unfortunately, they're in great debt right now. And the concern, as I was there, is that you have a country like China that is very aggressive about moving into other countries and having a great deal of influence in other countries. So China comes to Argentina, and their ethics aren't the same as ours. So in competing with China, it's a challenge. But more and more influence is being felt by China. Argentines are desperate for economic assistance. And so if we don't give it to them, they're turning to China for help and assistance. I was reading recently that they owe a debt to the World Bank, and through negotiations with China, Argentina is trying to pay back with the Chinese money rather than US dollars, which is odd and unusual, because usually the world currency is the dollar. But now we're getting to where China's currency is just as strong, and Argentina is accepting the yuan, I think it's the yuan, and trying to pay its debt off with a Chinese currency.
Yeah, that's a really important point. China, the way that they have increased their interest and efforts in international relations has been remarkable in the last couple of decades, and I feel that they're really edging on the United States in that area, and they have their eye on South America and in Argentina. So we have to keep our eye. We have to recognize the interest that we have in our regional partners in the Western Hemisphere. Absolutely.
Unfortunately, which I try to explain to my Argentine friends, is, to them, Argentina is the center of the universe, and they think they're very important to the rest of the world. And the U.S. makes their paper every day. For front page, page 2, page 3, every day there's going to be stories about the U.S. In contrast, here in San Antonio, you might get a short little story on Argentina once a month, if at that.
Yeah.
And trying to explain that Argentina is not a priority for the U.S. We have South Korea, we have China, we have Russia, we have Ukraine, Iran. We have so many other countries and so many other issues that Argentina is, 20, 25, 30 in regard to priorities right now that our country has. And we have to pay more attention to South America, our neighbors to the south, because they're our neighbors and they're closer than some of these other countries. And if we're not careful and we don't pay enough attention, there are other world powers that are going to have much more influence in those countries. And we're going to regret it down the road if we don't start paying more attention to South America and countries like Argentina.
I completely agree. I completely agree, Judge Prado. You spent 2.5 years in Argentina. You that's enough time to fall in love for sure. And I know you were happy to be back in San Antonio, I'm sure, because this is your home. But I know you surely miss elements of Argentina and Buenos Aires as well. What are a couple of the things that you miss most about the city, Buenos Aires, and about Argentina in general?
Well, I think the friendships that you made, the not so much the high level politicians, but just the normal citizens, the guy at the grocery store, the baker down the block. We made great friends. That you miss those relationships. It's a beautiful country. They have waterfalls, Iguazu, that are prettier than the Niagara Falls. They have Tierra del Fuego, which is at the tip of South America. They have mountains and skiing. They have wine country in Mendoza that's like Napa Valley. It's just a really beautiful country that has so much to offer outside of Buenos Aires that I had the opportunity to visit. Unfortunately, my last year there with COVID limited some of my visits, but I did have enough opportunities to go throughout the country and visit. In Argentina, it's just such a beautiful, beautiful city with wonderful buildings from the prior century. They have a beautiful opera house. They have wonderful opera that I had the opportunity to attend when the Met in New York is the off season. The opera singers are in Argentina performing. So you have symphonies, you have operas. There's a lot of cultural events, the soccer games, polo matches. Some of the best polo players in the world are there. It's just visiting their universities and talking to some of their students and their ambitions of what they want to do and come to the United States and perhaps get graduate degrees in the United States. Just talking to the regular citizens, I think is what I miss. The dealing with the politicians, it's like you don't know exactly who you're dealing with. Who can you trust? Who can you not trust? You're negotiating with them and they're not completely open with you, and just how much information can you share? But you go out and you have a little glass of vino and have some Malbec wine and have a big steak, have an asado in someone's backyard and just meet with the ordinary Argentine. You get to where you love the people down there in Argentina.
You mentioned the steak and the asados. and earlier in your comments, talking about the oil and the agriculture in Argentina, we started our conversation talking a little bit about the kind of the Hispanic element, but there's also Argentina's also there's elements that remind me of Texas as well. You have the cowboy, the great cowboy tradition of the gauchos. You've got the incredible tradition of beef eating. So I can, getting together with some friends, some real friends in Argentina, to have a glass of vino and a steak. I'm sure that's something that you miss. Now you're back in San Antonio. San Antonio, born and raised. I'm sure it was a great homecoming. You're a bona fide hometown boy and San Anto local. So my next question is, what would be your message, Ambassador Prado, to the young people born and raised in San Antonio regarding the possibilities for reaching the levels of success as you have, and maybe pursuing career opportunities outside of Texas or even outside of the United States? What would be your message to them?
I guess is to have the self-confidence in that you can do it. I went to high school on the west side of town, 94% Hispanic, raised in an Hispanic barrio neighborhood that I hadn't had much experience outside of the Hispanic culture, the Hispanic barrio, that when I started college, all of a sudden there's this big element of Anglos in my class that I wasn't used to. And it was a little bit intimidating. I don't think that going back to some issues that have just come up about affirmative action and all, I don't think that my high school education, my elementary, middle school education, high school education was up to par to some of the other schools. So I think it was more challenging for me, university, and I had to work harder at it. But you stay at it. You don't give up. You keep at it and take chances and take advantage of opportunities. Being Hispanic from the West Side, I never thought I could become a federal judge, but I had enough gumption to say, by golly, I'm going to go for it and see what happens. What can happen? All that can happen is I don't get the job. So what? So I went for it and got it. And appellate court, I'd been on the court for 19 years as a district judge, and I had an extensive record. If you can imagine 19 years of having all sorts of cases that the Senate could investigate, the FBI could investigate and find all sorts of issues in my background that might have caused me to not get the position, but I went forward with it and got confirmed again. And then as an ambassador with very little diplomatic experience, people would have said, well, you have no experience. You're not a political person that's has connections with the president. How do you think you're going to become an ambassador? Well, by golly, it doesn't hurt to try. And so is take chances and take advantage of opportunities, and don't let anyone tell you it can't be done, because if you try hard enough and you stick to it, you can do it. And I'm no different than any other kid being raised in the south side or west side of San Antonio or anywhere else. You can do it. My parents were supportive. I had no money to go to college. I went to junior college here in town and worked at a supermarket. And my parents were kind enough to say, if you save your money and use it for your education, you can keep your paycheck. So I worked part-time at a supermarket, a grocery store here in town, and saved my money, which enabled me to continue with my education. But it wasn't that I came from an affluent family. My parents didn't make it through middle school. I was the first in my family to graduate from college, but it was just ganas, stay with it. And my advice to any young person is, you can do it. If I can do it, you can do it.
It's Judge Prado, it's a powerful, inspirational message, and it's a powerful, inspirational story, your story. and particularly here in San Antonio and South Texas. I want to thank you again for giving time to us today, for your decades of service to our country, sir, to our state, to our wonderful city of San Antonio, and for your support of the University of the Incarnate Word. It was a real honor and a pleasure to speak with you today. And I thank you very much, sir.
No, thank you. It's a pleasure being with you. And I've been very fortunate to have some great opportunities and positions and be part of our government and give back public service. And I've really enjoyed my career. And it's not over. No telling what might be next.
It's not over. Well, thank you for making time today out of your busy schedule, and we will certainly be in contact. Judge Prado, thank you.
Thank you.